Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So today I'm going to be taking a look at BT13, and BT13 offers us lots of new and powerful tools to be able to build and iterate on some new and existing decks. And today's deck I'm going to be taking a look at is going to be the Rosemon deck. So the Rosemon deck is a deck similar to Bloomlord, where it's interacting a lot with the plants, fairies, and vegetation's traits, and trying to have its own spin on it, where this time, instead of wanting to suspend your own cards down, Rosemon is trying to suspend the opponent's cards down, and we have lots of new ways to be able to best support that strategy, and now that Rosemon is able to extend her reach to even try to suspend the opponent's tamers down, Rosemon is looking better than ever. But if you want, Bandai has a little breakdown that you could go through and read on their website, basically explaining some of the cards involved, highlighting some of the staples that you want to pick up for the deck, and even having their own recommended deck composition to have a good starting place in order to try to best support what the deck is trying to do, on top of an overall strategy write-up. That's kind of what I already laid out, all centered around the new Rosemon Burst Mode. If you really wanted to play a plant, fairy, and vegetation deck between Rosemon and Bloomlord, Bloomlord still is the stronger one of the two. It's just that Bloomlord really isn't changing a whole lot. It's just incorporating some of the new tools that Rosemon has generically to work with plants, fairies, and vegetations. If you really wanted to, you could even work in the new tamer, but for the most part, the deck doesn't really need to change at all to still be super powerful, effective, and competitive. But Bloomlord being the more competitive of the two aside, it's still going to be playing around with a lot of similar parts and pieces centered around the usage of plants, fairies, and vegetations, and Rosemon, even though it is the more casual of the two, still has some really good stuff going for it and is a little bit more accessible as a result. So, going over the deck, starting off with the Digitama, you can kind of do whatever you feel like you want with the Digitama slots. I'm going to be prioritizing DP boosting over drawing, just because the deck really doesn't have a good way at being able to DP boost itself to clear specific DP thresholds. So that's why I'm going to be running 4 copies of Bosamon as the main Digitama, because it's already interacting with the fact that we want to suspend the opponent's Digimon down, and its reward is for a nice 1000 DP boost. And then the 5th Digitama, if you even wanted to run one, could really be anything you feel like you want it to be. I'm just going to be utilizing 1 copy of Kokomon as still just a really decent draw engine, because we're still going to be interacting with suspending some of our own Digimon down, which we could still take advantage of. Next, on to the rookies, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Terriermon. So this is the BT3 version of Terriermon, and this is a tech or flex spot, and it could realistically be anything you want it to be. I just have room for some floodgates, and I'm already going to be running an in-line or in-engine floodgate, so I figured I might as well splash in the other one just to try to have as much disruption towards the opponent as I possibly can. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Pomumon from BT9. So, Pomumon from BT9 is the in-engine floodgate that we want to run just because it is a vegetation, and it's trying to, again, like Terriermon, stop and slow down the opponent from specific actions. We have ways to play around this ourselves, and we're not really trying to play a whole lot of Digimon by card effects in general, so it's not like Pomumon is that bad of a floodgate for us to utilize. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Palmon. So this is the BT10 version of Palmon, and this is a fantastic card because it is going to be one of the biggest consistency tools for the deck, being the in-engine searcher for our plants and vegetations, while also being able to look for our fairy-traded Digimon. And then the other in-engine searching tool that we have is going to be the 4 copies of Lalamon. So Lalamon is looking for plants, fairies, and vegetations, while also being able to look more specifically for our Yoshino tamer. While it also has a big advantage over Palmon, actually having an inheritable ability versus digging 1 card deeper, where its inheritable ability just allows us to have cleaner evolutions as long as we have a green tamer in play. Next, on to the champions, I'm going to be running 2 copies of RedVegiemon. So, RedVegiemon from BT10, even though it is a vanilla card, we still want to use this card, mostly for its stats being a super efficient level 4 Digimon for us to use, while also being a vegetation-traded Digimon for us to try to dig out and interact with. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Sunflowmon. So this is the BT10 version of Sunflowmon, and this is going to help us play out our low DP'd plants, berries, and vegetations by allowing us to suspend another Digimon we have in play, so it helps us swarm the field a little bit more effective and efficiently. Then on top of that, when our Digimon are being suspended by our own card effects, which even though that's not the core focus of what Rosemon's trying to do, we could still do it utilizing some of the bloomlord tech because it's all still plants, berries, and vegetations. We could still take advantage of the fact that this can help us draw some extra cards. And then the last champion of the deck is going to be 4 copies of the brand new BT13 version of Sunflowmon. So this version of Sunflowmon is another card that also wants to try to suspend this Digimon down, which could trigger some of our various different abilities, but the reward for suspending this Digimon down is being able to Digivolve into a fairy-traded Digimon for a reduced Digivolution cost of 2, basically acting like Digizorb. Then on top of that, it has a nice inheritable ability that we saw with our BT13 Lalamon, where as long as we have a green tamer in play, it allows our Digivolutions to be more efficient by having a reduced cost of 1 to them. Next, on to the ultimates, I'm going to be running 1 copy of Blosamon. So Blosamon is so good that we can only run 1 copy of this, mainly because the Digisorption 3 ability allowing us to suspend one of our Digimon down to basically make it a free evolution just helps us climb our stages as effective and efficiently as we possibly can, on top of the fact that it is working inside of our engine just because it is a vegetation-traded Digimon as well. Next, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Ajatarmon. Ajatarmon is another tech or flex spot for the deck, and it could realistically be whatever level 5 you feel like you want to be playing around with. Its main ability still is pretty useful at, again, trying to act as a way to suspend our own Digimon down for some extra benefits, and the benefit for utilizing his ability is, like Sunflowmon, being able to create a wide field, utilizing our low-level Digimon as extra cards we could play off of his ability. Then, on top of that, his inheritable ability is doing something very similar to Sunflowmon, where when one of our own Digimon gets suspended by our own card effects, then we get to gain a memory instead of draw a card, which could help make certain plays a little bit more efficient than they normally would have been. And the last ultimate of the deck is going to be 4 copies of the brand new Lilamon. So Lilamon here has this nice when Digivolving ability that allows us to be able to play out our Yoshino for free. It doesn't necessarily matter how many Yoshinos we have on our field, it's just allowing us to always play one, which is really, really nice, making sure we can have our tamer set up for whatever we need her for. Then on top of that, she has a nice inheritable ability that's just trying to increase the overall damage output of the deck, because unlike Bloomlord, Rosemon doesn't have it built in, so this is where the Security Tac Plus is going to be coming from, as long as the opponent has a suspended Digimon. Next, on to the Megas, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Rosemon. So this is the brand new BT13 version of Rosemon, and she's a pretty decent card at doing what she needs to do for supporting the deck. So when you Digivolve up into her, you get to suspend one of the opponent's Digimon or Tamers down, and then you get to unsuspend this Digimon. So she really wants the level 5 to be suspended, so that way you could take full advantage of this ability to unsuspend her to continue doing what she was originally going to try to do, while making sure the opponent's stuff is suspended and having a way to suspend it down, so that way it triggers some of our various other abilities and her secondary ability, which happens during all turns, so once per turn. When an opponent's Digimon or Tamer becomes suspended, it doesn't matter if we're doing it during our turn or the opponent is doing it during their turn. As long as they're being suspended, we get to suspend one of the opponent's Digimon or Tamers down to try to help control the field a little bit more. And then as far as the supporting level 6 of the deck, it could really be anything you feel like you want it to be, but I'm going to be utilizing 2 copies of Hydramon just because it's playing in line and in engine with everything that the deck is trying to do. So it has a nice when digivolving ability where we get to suspend one Digimon on the field. Doesn't matter if it's ours or the opponent's, so we could use it to trigger various different abilities based on what we're actually looking to gain out of the card in the situation we're digivolving into it. Then it has a nice secondary ability where during all turns once per turn, when an opponent's Digimon becomes suspended, hopefully off of our when digivolving ability, then for each other suspended Digimon with Plant, Fairy, and Vegetation in its traits that we have in play, we're going to be gaining 1 memory. So the wider the field that's suspended, the more memory we're going to be gaining off of this ability. Then on top of that, it has a nice third ability that's acting as some pretty decent removal because the deck really doesn't have a whole lot of removal, where at the end of your turn, once per turn, if we have 2 or more suspended Digimon with Plant, Fairy, or Vegetation in their traits, then we get to bot deck one of the opponent's suspended Digimon, which ideally should be one of the Digimon suspended based on some of our various other card effects. And then when it comes to the level 7 of the deck, I'm only going to be running 3 copies of Rosemon Burst Mode. So Rosemon Burst Mode is for the most part the win condition of the deck because of that Burst Digivolution, where we could Digivolve for free on top of a Rosemon by bouncing one of our Yoshino Tamers back to our hand. And unfortunately, if we aren't able to finish off the opponent with our Burst Mode, then we will basically Digivolve this card back down into that Rosemon. But regardless, this is still just a very powerful card to Digivolve into, whether you're paying for the cost or using that Burst Evolution, just because when we Digivolve into this card, we get to suspend one of the opponent's Digimon and one of their Tamers down, and on top of that, until the end of the opponent's turn, all of their Digimon and Tamers do not unsuspend. So this is really powerful because while we're going up our chain, we're going to try to suspend the opponent's cards down, and then when we go up into her, we're going to suspend more cards down and hopefully stunlock their entire field. Then she even has a nice secondary ability to take advantage of the opponent having a wide field that is suspended, where we get to trash the top card of the opponent's security stack for every 2 of the opponent's suspended Digimon or Tamers. So the more cards that are suspended on their field, the better this card is at being able to rip apart through the opponent's security. And then when it comes to the Tamers, I'm just going to be running 4 copies of Yoshino. So Yoshino is going to be the main Tamer of the deck, also being the memory fixer for the deck as well. Then the real pull on us wanting to utilize this card not only potentially for Rosemon, but for Bloomlord as well, is the fact that she's interacting with our plants, fairies, and vegetations, where when we Digivolve into a Digimon with those traits, then we get to suspend this Tamer to be able to gain a memory to make our evolution as cheap and efficient as we can possibly make it, on top of all of the other abilities that's helping reduce the cost of our Digivolutions already as well. And then when it comes to the options, and speaking of cost reduction, I'm going to be running 1 copy of Hidden Potential Discovered. So Hidden Potential Discovered is another card that is so powerful that we're only allowed to run 1 copy of it in our deck, because the next time our green Digimon would Digivolve, we get to suspend one of our Digimon to reduce the Digivolution cost by 5, so it's basically acting like a free evolution, which is really tempo efficient for what we want to try to do on climbing our stages as fast as possible. And then when it comes to the removal option of the deck, this is where we do have some flexibility. I'm going to be not necessarily running a removal option, I'm just going to be running Śānti at 2 copies, just as an alternative way to be able to try to suspend not only our Digimon down, but the opponent's Digimon or Tamer down, as well as trying to stunlock whatever we just suspended. And then the last option of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Green Memory Boost, just for that added consistency. So looking at the top 4 for any green Digimon is still really good, especially when all of our Digimon already are green. Then it's going to be setting itself up into the battle area to use for its secondary main ability of Delay to be able to gain 2 memory at a later turn to extend and enhance some of our plays and make plays possible that weren't otherwise. And when it comes to the game plan and gameplay of the deck, it is just trying to mostly utilize the BT13 line, as that is the most optimal evolution path that you can go to when digivolving into your Rosemon to make it your combo and power plays. But because of the whole plants, fairies, and vegetation archetype that she's working in, we still do have lots of good synergy with a lot of the Bloomlord pieces that we're going to try to adopt and adapt. So when it comes to the level 3 slots, outside of Terriermon being the only non-in-engine card, we're going to mostly just try to play them for free off of some of our various card effects, so it doesn't really matter which one we're going to be utilizing. Obviously, the best one to hide in our raising area is going to be the brand new BT13 Lalamon, because it actually has an inheritable for us to use. But even if we do have to end up hard playing it or playing it off of our card effects, the fact that Lalamon and Palmon both help search and dig out cards just makes the deck extra consistent. Then when it comes to the usage of the level 4s, again, the best and most optimal line is going to be off of our BT13 cards, so that's going to be the one I'm going to want to focus and prioritize, and when we're building our secondary stack, that's kind of where the other two just kind of come in handy, just to try to establish something and create a wide board for some of our various other cards to be able to use. And then when it comes to our level 5 play, if we don't have our tamer set up, we usually would want to raise out to our level 4 if we have our tamer in our hand, because we could use Sunflowmon's ability to suspend itself to then digivolve for a reduced cost of 2 into our Lilamon. So we're basically paying 1 to digivolve into our Lilamon to then set up our tamer. Then we're able to then be able to go into a Rosemon super efficiently. But if we do have a Yoshino already set up, this just allows us to be able to digivolve for 1, not be able to pass the turn, set up a second Yoshino, and then from this type of position, we could then digivolve into our level 6, and then have our level 6 suspend one of the opponent's Digimon down, and then be able to unsuspend it. With the combination of Sunflowmon and Lalamon, that allows us to be able to basically reduce the evolution cost by 2, making it only 1 to digivolve into our Rosemon, and then with that Yoshino set up when we digivolved into our Lilamon, then we could suspend it to be able to gain an additional memory, basically making it a free evolution. Then while our Yoshino is suspended, we could then use the Yoshinos to then be able to digivolve for free and make a big burst mode play. And then we do have a whole bunch of other tech and tools that we could think about utilizing, all depending on what you're trying to gain out of the deck, the types of abilities and interactions you're looking for, and the expected meta that you're going to be playing up against, as well as what resources you actually have available to you. So when it comes to some alternative Digitamas, we do have a couple of different Digitamas that we could use. As I already mentioned before, it really just doesn't matter on what you're trying to use. But when it comes to some alternative level 3s, we do have some pretty decent options when it comes to utilizing plants, fairies, and vegetations. We could use BT11 Palmon to try to help us draw some more cards. We could use EX3 Pomumon to try to help suspend the opponent's Digimon down. And then if we are going to be leaning a little bit into Digiburst, then we also do have the Palmon that could add jamming when we're Digibursting. Then on top of that, we do have some other pretty decent level 4 Digimon we could think about playing, like Vegiemon for some extra memory generation, and Yakimon as another blocker, on top of, again, utilizing Digiburst to try to actually utilize Wheatmon, as well as him having some pretty good stats already. Then when it comes to the level 5s, we could lean into more Digibursts and run something like the BT4 Lilamon, and we even have a Rosemon that also has a Digiburst ability if we really wanted to take that direction, while also her inheritable ability being able to help us suspend the opponent's Digimon still could help with what the deck is trying to do. But if you do just want some extra consistency and another fairy in our level 5 slot, you could easily run the starter deck Lilamon to accomplish that same goal, as well as running some other Digizorption cards in the plant, fairy, and vegetation lineup. Then when it comes to the other level 6s, we do have Lotusmon, that again is another card that's just generically working with plants, fairies, and vegetations, as well as a whole slew of different Rosemons that we could try to take advantage of, depending on what abilities you're trying to line up, like Digiburst or even Digizorption. Then when it comes to some of the other options, because we are at least attempting to play a tamer, we could try to slot in something like a defense plugin to try to add some extra defensive capabilities and protection inside of the deck, as well as the fact that we do have some other options to try to help with the overall offensive capabilities, like Dimension Scissor, to be able to get extra attacks with, or we do have other removal options we could think about utilizing to try to bounce or bottom deck the opponent's cards, depending on the current state that they're in, or putting them in that state to be able to utilize these cards a little bit more effectively, like Grandisol already does, all in one package. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below, and down in the description below are a couple of different ways you could support me and the channel. So I do have a TCG Player affiliate link, so when you use that link to buy cards off of TCG Player, then some of that money will go to supporting me and the channel. I also do make and sell playmats over on Overcard Gamers on Facebook, so when you buy a playmat with my design, then some of that money will also go to help supporting me and the channel. And on top of all of that, I do have a Twitch account over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu, so giving me a follow and a subscription also helps support me there, and I do play Digimon on top of various other games on that platform as well. So thank you everyone for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.